The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John. Since the Passover of the Jews was near, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. He found in the temple area those who sold oxen, sheep, and doves, as well as the money changers seated there. He made a whip out of cords and drove them all out of the temple area with the sheep and the oxen, and spilled the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who sold doves, he said, "Take these out of here and stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples recalled the words of Scripture, "Zeal for your house will consume me." At this, the Jews answered and said to him, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and you will raise it up in 3 days. But he was speaking to them about the temple of his body. Therefore, when he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they came to believe the Scriptures and the word that Jesus had spoken. While he was in Jerusalem for the feast of Passover, many began to believe in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus would not trust himself to them because he knew them all and did not need anyone to testify about human nature. He himself understood it well. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, I will be nice this evening and not ask for a show of hands, but I'll pose a question and you can answer it for yourself. Have you ever read a novel or murder mystery or some story and you skipped towards the end to find out the conclusion before you finished reading the whole book? Don't answer the question. I can't deny that I have not done that. And once in a while, you kind of skip ahead because curiosity gets to you. You're a little anxious, you want to know. And I share that thought with you because that's what I've been doing during Lent. We're in the beginning of John's Gospel, but I jumped ahead a little to one of my most haunting questions in all of the Scripture, and it's a question we'll hear in a few weeks. And that question is in the dialogue between Jesus and Pontius Pilate, when Jesus is being interrogated, and Pilate basically says, "What have you come to do?" And Jesus' reply is, "I've come to testify to the truth." And we hear Pilate's response, "Truth? What is truth?" Great question to ponder. Truth. What is truth? Well, we just came back from the Diocesan Youth Convention. It was this weekend, and was a wonderful weekend. I wasn't privileged to be there the whole time, but was there each day for a little while. And the theme of the convention this year was True Story. Made me think again about this line from John's Gospel. And in the youth convention, True Story, certainly probably through all of the workshops and presentations, probing the question, what is your own true story? What is my true story? What is the true story of Christ? And what is the true story of our lives as we live the life of faith? In a nutshell, some of the thoughts to reflect on at the convention. Truth. What is truth? And where do we find truth? Maybe even a harder question to answer. Well, I think for many, they look to find truth on social media. That's the answer today, social media. And many choose to post things on various social media sites. And any posting gets everybody who reads it immediately fired up. The blood pressure, clicks a little higher as you read social media today. And anyone can almost post anything about anyone or anything at any time, regardless if the content is objectively true or not. It's not really a criteria. You can post anything you want at any moment. And my own opinion of social media, there's less room for actual news or truth there. Rather, we have many opinions, maybe some half-truths, some rhetoric, and certainly very high-flying emotion usually, but not a lot of accountability, nor really any remorse for anything which was said inappropriately. People become very offended very fast by what's posted on social media. And almost every single tweet, post, reply, snap, all of them evoke a great response. Social media really today can cause many of us to go to the extreme as we respond to what we see posted. Well, I plant that in your head because I think Jesus would have been great on social media. He is very often spoken of there, but Jesus could definitely push the buttons to get an extreme response, extreme reactions. And today's gospel is no different. Truth, what is truth? And Jesus is truth. We're told that in the second reading very clearly, that Jesus is the wisdom of God. So Jesus is truth. And with just a few words, usually, Jesus can send the Pharisees reeling in anger, and he can silence the Sadducees to become defensive. Today's gospel, Jesus speaks the truth. Well, the temple for Jews was very much the center of life. And there were three major feasts that really called Jewish people to go to the temple in Jerusalem. And these feasts required them to pray, to observe the feast, and to offer sacrifice. And Passover was the highest of the three feasts, calling the Jews to come to the temple. And the Jews who traveled to Jerusalem needed to do a few things. Once they got there, first of all, they had to exchange money. And we heard about the money changers in the temple. And they also had to purchase the animals for sacrifice. And Jesus sees what's going on. We hear it in the gospel. Jesus is truth. He had definitely had enough of the corruption that he saw because he knew there was a lot of cheating going on in the exchange of money. He knew that people were paying far too much for these animals, overcharging taking place. But even more important than these two offenses, the temple became a marketplace which eclipsed the real purpose of the temple, to become that place to contact God, the Father. And Jesus, we hear, became very angry. He drove them all out, tipped the tables over. And what was the response? What was the response of the Jews and their leaders? They were angry. Often when we're confronted with the truth, and deep in our conscience, deep in our heart, we know what we've just heard is true. What is often our response? Anger. Anger is often a response because it may strike a little nerve that we are not living that truth, and our conscience has been confronted with it. And the Jewish people, they were angry. And in their anger, what did they say? Prove it to us. What sign are you going to give? Prove it. We want a sign that you had the authority to do this. And Jesus, of course, says, I'll destroy the temple and raise it again in 3 days. Reminding us of the words of the prophet Jeremiah and certainly predicting his own suffering, death, and resurrection. So the real question today, few of them, what is truth? A great question to pose. Secondly, do we get more caught up in the small t truths that we see in social media, or can we get caught up in the capital T truth of Christ? What captivates more of our time and our energy? And the real question is, how is your temple doing? How is the temple? And what Jesus was not talking about a building. He was talking about this temple. We call it a church in Catholic circles. How is this church doing? How is the church of your life doing? And does the truth really reside in the depth of your church? And have you taken time to really see if there is something not Christ-centered, not truthful, which has taken up residence within this temple? And during the season of Lent, have we made up our minds to work hard to eliminate that which is not true from our temple so that we can experience with greater joy the resurrection of Christ this Easter? What is truth?